The breaking news just into CNN, and these are new pictures live in central Beirut. CNN is learning of new strikes, Israeli airstrikes, to strike inside the city center of Beirut. In fact, the closest to the city center of Israeli strikes so far during this latest offensive there. CNN has geolocated these scenes in the city center of Beirut. CNN's Nick Robertson joins me now here in Tel Aviv. Nick, we have, of course, seen a whole series of Israeli airstrikes across southern Lebanon, no question, but also in Beirut, most significantly in the southern part of Beirut, the one that killed Hassan Nasrallah. But a strike right in the city center. Tell us the significance of that.
Well, it clearly indicates that the IDF thinks that there are targets that are now closer to the city center. I mean, that makes sense because the strikes in Beirut have been targeted strikes at individuals. So this again suggests that they were targeting an individual. But by having it so close to the city center, for all those people that moved away from the southern suburbs where Hezbollah is known to sort of have deep roots and a stronghold, this means these other areas, or would indicate these other areas, are now less safe, and it perhaps indicate that high-value Hezbollah targets or whomever are moving more centrally located.
It also has a significance, does it not? Because in Lebanon, the southern part of Beirut, considered as we watch these live pictures here, more of a Hezbollah stronghold. If you strike in the city center, in quite a mixed city with all the various ethnicities and religions that make up this diverse society here, you are bringing the war to them as well, are you not?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to the Civil War days, there were those sort of the Green Line and the other sort of the library intersection, where these were the sort of these were the dividing lines between the different the different communities, whether it would be Christian, whether it be Shia, whether it be Sunni, and the different strongholds there. So yes, when you come into the center, and this we understand was near the Kola Bridge, a major intersection.
It's a major intersection in downtown,
yeah. When you bring it in there, then you are coming out of the sort of more the areas that are known as the Shia strongholds, the Hezbollah strongholds. But also it does indicate perhaps that some Hezbollah figures are now realizing that there is no safety where they were. But it seems to be that this would suggest that again the Israelis, the IDF, have an intelligence penetration that is giving them a degree of tracking on some of these figures.
They can find them wherever they are. I should note that this video was taken just moments ago. It is not live video, but showing the immediate aftermath of this strike in Beirut. Nick Robertson.
I was just going to say, it seems to be another part of the IDF's continued effort, and this was the impression I was getting speaking with IDF officials today, to continue to keep Hezbollah on the back foot. This is a moment to press the advantage, and very clearly they continue to do that.
And to deliver the message, it seems, in quite explicit form, that they could find Hezbollah leaders and fighters wherever they are. And we've seen a lot of evidence of that in recent days. Nick Robertson, thanks so much. I want to turn now to our panel of experts, senior national security analyst, former deputy director of national intelligence, Beth Sanner. Also joining us, Aaron David Miller, longtime Middle East diplomat, and General Wesley Clark, of course, with a long history himself in national security, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. Good to have you all here. Aaron David Miller, first, if I could begin with you, as we see these strikes now that are showing the true extent far and wide of this ongoing military series of operations against Hezbollah across Lebanon, but also what we saw earlier today, strikes against Houthi rebels in Yemen. This expanded offensive, escalation, whatever you want to call it, is far from over.
There's no doubt about it. In fact, Jim, I don't believe in transformations. They're rare in life and certainly very rare in Middle Eastern politics. Doubtless, the Israelis have made an extraordinary effort to decapitate Hezbollah, go after their comms, their intelligence network, their veteran commanders. The real question in the end, though, is, I think, how in fact do you translate even strategic successes into what the Israelis hope is a broader aim, which is not just to break the ring of fire, but break it in a way that they can return 70,000 to 80,000 Israelis who have been dislocated from their homes in the wake of October 7th, and to give them not just an assurance from the government that they have a security, but a sense of real security so that no cross-border incursions by Radwan forces in southern Lebanon will occur. That's going to be a great fear. So again, I think we're in early days here of three wars of attrition: one between Israel and Hamas, which is not over; one between Israel and Hezbollah, which is ongoing; and of course the premier event between Israel and the Islamic Republic of Iran.
General Wesley Clark, the discussion now in Israel is, will there be a ground component to ongoing Israeli operations against Hezbollah? Preparations are underway. We have seen, my colleagues have seen some of those forces positioning in northern Israel. Would it be necessary, in your view, from a military perspective, for Israel to send ground forces in to accomplish what appears to be their goal, which is to push back Hezbollah forces from its northern border?
Yes, that would appear to be necessary. If that's the goal, if it's to push them back 10 miles, yes, you're going to have ground forces in there. Really depends on how the Israelis read the results of the airstrikes and the first moves of the ground forces. If they hit a lot of resistance, their objectives may be flexible. But I have to believe that the Israelis right now see nothing but weakness. Iran is weak. Iran doesn't want to intervene, doesn't want a war. And so I think the Israelis are going to do maximum damage they can right now to Hezbollah, and that means ground forces.
Beth Sanner, and if you're just joining us, these are pictures from just moments ago of an Israeli strike in the center of Beirut, a line, if you want to call it that we have not seen these Israeli strikes cross yet in this latest escalation. But Beth, as you follow, as you know, the U.S. preference, and President Biden repeated again today, is for some sort of negotiated settlement to get security for northern Israel, but also to end the expanded fighting between Israel and Hezbollah. Is there any credible path that exists today to carry that out, or is Israel fully invested in a military solution, if you want to call it that, purely a military solution?
Well, I think this is something that maybe Biden will be talking to Netanyahu about a little bit later tonight, because as Aaron said, it's, you can have these strategic successes, whatever you want to call it, on the battlefield. But ultimately you have to have some kind of political agreement in order to create a permanent kind of, safe area so people can return home. Because, what is going on when you bomb the center of Beirut, you're starting to, not only do you have basically ground forces that are still intact in southern Lebanon, even if they may be scattered and without a command and control, there's still tens of thousands of soldiers, and you're creating, just a sense of this Lebanese people against Israel. In the long run, this is what Biden always talks about, right? That you need to have a sense of strategy of where you're going and how you're actually going to get that line between the military successes and the long-term stability that you seek. And so, nope, we're not ready yet. I don't think that there's any way that the IDF is going to hold back at this point. They have a strategy, they have an existential threat, and they're going to go for it for a while more.
Well, what you just described, right, is exactly how some U.S. officials, but even some Israelis, speak about the issue here between Israelis and Palestinians, and that is that you need a political agreement, not purely a forever war. But Aaron David Miller, at least the current Israeli government, seems to have no substantive interest or has demonstrated no commitment to that path. Where is that path? Who would lead such a path to some sort of negotiated solution?
I mean, Jim, that's the core question, right? I mean, you've seen a year, almost hard to believe. It'll be a year next week, and on next Monday, week from Monday. And what you're going to end up with, I'm afraid, is two incredibly traumatized communities, which are effectively, in my judgment, with respect to a political solution, leaderless. You have an Israeli prime minister whose organizing principle is to try to maintain himself in power, and he's got a coalition, particularly two extremist ministers who will both. By the way, it's interesting because he just added Gideon Sa'ar to the coalition, another 4 seats. So he does have more running room should he choose to take it. But look, November 5th is the key date for Benjamin Netanyahu. He's waiting to see, essentially,
Yeah.
who the next president of the United States is. And I think that
Yeah.
he'll adjust accordingly. So the answer is no. I see no pathway right now out of this.
Sad fact, too often. Beth, Aaron David Miller, General Clark, thanks so much to all of you for joining us.